with Sherry is a bariatric podcast talking about weight loss surgery. I am not a licensed professional. Any views and or opinions expressed in the show are those of the speakers and do not reflect the bariatric community as a whole. Always reach out to a professional with any medical issues you are experiencing. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I hope you enjoy the show. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Unzipped with Sherry with yours truly. It's me, Sherry. Duh. It's been over a month. We've been gone for a while. We've been really busy with life and things have been, happening behind the scenes, but we are back with a vengeance. And I am so excited to share with you Anastacia, who's going to be my guest for today. And she had, I believe it was the bypass in November of 2022. So she's less than a year out, but she has already accomplished such amazing things with her transformation, and her mindset is already there. Her mentality is already there. She's kicking ass. She's in the fitness scene, and you guys are going to absolutely fall in love with her the way that I have. When I met her, we clicked instantly. She has such an amazing heart, and her story is incredible, and you're not going to want to miss this. So Anastacia, I hope you're ready because we're about to get unzipped. No pressure. We all have a story on how we got here, right? So for me, I used to be over 350 pounds until one day I made the single decision that I wanted change. Weight loss surgery has saved my life, and now I am here for you. I want to hear your story. You know, the one that happened during that before and after picture. It's time to unzip. What's your story? Welcome, gorgeous. How are you?
Hi, I'm good. Thank you so much for having me.
Oh my God. First and foremost, thank you so much for agreeing to come on the show. I know it was fairly last minute. And usually with all of my guests, I usually spend like an hour or two. I hear their backstory. We kind of do like a pre-chat. And with Anastacia and I, we literally just shot the shit. Because I was like, I already know your story. I already know your personality. You're going to be a natural at this. You're going to be fine. So let's just have a conversation and just shoot the shit. So I don't even know if we really talked very much about bariatric or anything when we were talking. But first and foremost, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it. And for those who don't know who this glorious, gorgeous specimen is, this is Anastacia. If you are listening on Spotify, I encourage you to come check us out on YouTube because you can actually watch us in person and see, what's going on. But for those of you who don't know, or for people who don't know who you are, I thought it'd be kind of fun. I like to do with all of my guests where we kind of just tell a little bit about your backstory, or what I like to call the origin story before this new chapter all began.
Are you like more like bariatric origin story, or just who I am, what I'm about in general?
I mean, I feel it's kind of hard to cram 30 something years into an hour podcast or in a 5-minute segment. I would say, how about this? Like, what were you like as a kid when it came to obesity and being overweight? Were you somebody who became overweight later on in life, or was it something that you've always struggled with from childhood?
No, I was one of those people that I've only ever known myself as overweight. I was a chubby baby. I was a chubby toddler. I was a chubby teen. I was just, I was just plump my whole life. I would say that I was overweight until my teens, but I really started to get to that point where it was like pushing the boundaries of being really unhealthy for me, like in my early 20s. And then the worst was probably the last like 5 years as far as my obesity. But I never lived in society's idea of a skinny body. I was always overweight, and it was something that I was always very aware of it too, so
well, and that was gonna be my question, is like, at what age were you like consciously aware that you were quote unquote overweight? Because for me, I never thought of myself as overweight. I was a tomboy and I played football and I played sports, and I never thought of myself as fat until a teacher told me that I was fat. And I was like 11 or 12. And that was the first time it registered to me that, yeah, like I knew I was bigger than the other girls or whatever, but I never associated it with because I was fat or unhealthy.
No, I was unfortunately made pretty aware of it at a young age. I mean, like I said, I was kind of like a chubby baby and a chubby toddler. So like my family had cute little names, like they used to go fat gully gully gully, and they tickle my belly. But like, I was a baby, so
Yeah.
whatever. But when I started to get to be like probably 8, 9, 10, our family had like a core group of friends, and they all had children. We were all around the same ages, so we would all hang out. And I was, for one, the only girl out of like 12 people, 12 kids, and that was like the thing that they clung on to. They started calling me her like terrible names and just bullying me, and then that just kind of stuck with me. It just kind of like was something that I just never really let go of after that. But people would make comments because I was, overweight. I was, and I had like a grandmother who was
Mhm.
like very into nutrition and fitness, and so there would be like sly things here and there. Like I had, a couple aunts. I had one aunt who was the opposite end of the spectrum. She was, had also struggled with weight most of her life. She actually had bariatric surgery, and I was in the waiting room waiting for her the whole time when I was in like
Really?
17 or 18. Yeah. And then I had one on the opposite end of the spectrum who was, very into diet culture, always on a diet, always very judgmental of everybody else and how they looked, and was not one to hold back when she felt like you needed to tweak something about yourself. So, there was always just a lot of, opinions from the outside on my appearance. And I don't think they were coming at me necessarily in a malicious way, but it's something that when you're developing,
Mhm.
an idea of yourself and trying to like grow into your body, and you're trying to develop healthy relationships with yourself and your body at, 10, 11, 12, you don't forget
Yeah.
those things. So,
No, and I honestly feel, yes, there are people that are purposefully hurtful or whatever with their comments, but I think a lot of times in families, I don't think they mean it to come off as being an asshole or in a negative way. It's just the way that they say it like resonates with us. Like, and it could be something simple as like, do you want that extra piece of bread, or do you really want something like that? Or have you ever thought about, Weight Watchers, or, and you're like, they're constantly making these comments that are making you more conscious about your weight, and it's like in their head, I feel like they're genuinely trying to give support and like help you by giving you these suggestions. And you're like, okay, Carol, I know like that I'm fat or whatever. Like I will do it when I'm ready, or God knows that I've tried. Um, but despite like being overweight, did that cause you to be more extroverted, or like were you or introverted? Like were you still like social as a kid and like outgoing, or were you more reserved?
oh no, I was definitely much more the extrovert. I think subconsciously felt like I had to compensate. So I became the like, fat funny friend. I was always like the one cracking jokes and being silly and just like, always laughing and trying to get everybody to have a good time. And I was very social. I fit into a lot of different groups in my high school. My school was very small. There was only 40 kids in my grade. So
Really?
um, yeah, I graduated like 46, I think.
Oh my God, I
And
had like
so
eight or nine
everybody,
hundred.
yeah, right. That was my whole school. Literally, we had one building for K through 12. That helps you.
Wow.
Yeah. So everybody knew everybody. And so I had, I adapted into a lot of different groups, but I definitely was more the extrovert. I feel like I still am. But yeah, I wasn't the one that like necessarily faded into the background, but I tried to like make my personality
Hmm.
bigger than my body,
Yeah.
right? So I was definitely more the extrovert.
And I think that's interesting. And because I do think that you're a product of your environment. And I feel like if you're in a school with that many, with that little amount of kids, there's really nowhere for you to hide. So everybody
Mhm.
is going to know you. Whereas, like in my school, we had, I think my grade would have like eight or 900 students in it. Like I'm from LA, and like we had like the oversized classrooms and everything. So it was so easy to hide amongst the shadows and be in the back of the class. And I would go 4 years with kids being in the class every single year, and they still didn't know who I am because I would hide. So for me, I was extremely introverted and shy and insecure. Yeah, Crystal says that she's a fat, funny friend too, and was the biggest bully. But like for me, I was the same way. In high school, I was completely shy. I didn't talk to, like, I didn't have a ton of friends or anything. But as I got older and started like being in the working world and working in customer service, like you have to build this personality. And so I thought people are making jokes about me in their head, obviously, because I'm overweight. So I might as well beat them to the punch. And then I would start making jokes about it. Or then I started building like this very dry, sarcastic sense of humor. And like I would have to build my personality that way because I felt like nobody would be paying attention to me otherwise. I don't know if that makes sense, but LA is a
Yeah.
very vain city to grow up in for sure.
Oh gosh, I can't even imagine. I can't even imagine.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. So you just had surgery less than a year ago. So I'm curious to know what your like weight loss journey on your own was like over the years. Like, did you try things on your own? Like, was there anything that started working or what?
I tried everything. I think like so many people, I tried everything. I did Weight Watchers, I did keto, I did, cabbage soup diets and grapefruit diets and
I
cottage
forgot the
cheese
cabbage
diets
soup. Yeah.
all of it. I tried all of it. I did the cayenne pepper, lemon, water stuff. I did intermittent fasting. I literally tried everything I could think of. And nothing stuck, for very long. But I also, was addicted to food. I had obsessive thoughts about food, and things would work for a while. And then I would just like go off the deep end. But I also think that I was coming at it from a place of extreme deprivation, right? It was 0 or 100. I
Yeah,
was
all or
either
nothing.
dieting so much that it was completely unenjoyable. So, and then I would binge and then I would give up. And so I did that my whole life. I had times where things were somewhat successful. I did lose a fairly significant amount of weight during a difficult time in my life, but it wasn't
Mm.
because I was necessarily trying. It was just
Stress.
happening. But then once I kind of got back into life and doing the things I was doing, it came right back. It came right back because I had never picked something that would be long term sustainably like healthy. It was
And
always some sort of fad diet.
yes, and I was going to say I think that's what's been the downfall of so many people who ended up turning to obesity is we live in a fad diet culture. It's always like the new pill or the new program or the new video to try or whatever that it's always like this, people want this quick fix. They want to just like lose the weight overnight and what we don't understand is we did not gain the weight overnight. And so yeah, some people might do cabbage soup diets or like the keto thing. I did paleo for 30 days one time and other people can lose like a drastic amount of weight because you're depriving yourself of all of these things. And the minute you go back to it, your body's going to just soak it up like a sponge and it's not going to get rid of it because it doesn't know when it's going to happen again. So like it's so damaging to our body. And the more that we do these fad diets and these yo-yos, the more that we're slowing our metabolism over time so that when something is finally working, our body's not going to respond to it.
And then you have the mental aspect of it, which I almost think is even more important than the physical changes you
Mhm.
see, because of course, every time you don't succeed, you immediately go back. At least for me, I would get into that self deprivation mode where I was like, I'm a failure. I'm not working
Mhm.
hard enough. I didn't try hard enough. And I would just start to beat myself up so much about it. And then, of course, that cyclical cycle. Now I'm sad and depressed. So who is my savior? Food.
Right.
We just become this circle of like deprivation, binge, self-loathing, repeat. Deprivation,
Mhm.
binging, self-loathing, repeat. And it was like this cycle that I just couldn't get out of. Um,
Yeah.
but I didn't realize until now that a lot has changed in my life, that it none of the things that I was trying to do and was choosing would have been successful long term because they weren't enjoyable and they weren't realistic lifestyle changes for
Mhm.
me or for probably anyone
Right.
long.
And I'm curious because you're younger than me. I hate you, which is fine. I still love you. But I feel like with
Time to.
you growing up, bariatric surgery was a lot more talked about. Like it's like I even when you were growing up a little bit, like it wasn't as common or as often as people are having it now, but it was always on the table. And I remember even me being like 16 years old and I had an aunt that had the bypass. And but back then it was only under extreme circumstances, like they weren't just giving it out to everybody. So I remember like in my 20s, like the lap band was really big and I would toy with it or whatever. But to have bariatric surgery, I mean, that is a very big surgery to have, just in the concept of having to lose weight or whatever. And I'm just curious, like, if there was to have to come to that decision, which is never easy for anyone, I'm curious for you, what was the turning point for you that kind of made you decide, you know what, enough's enough. I need to at least look into this as an option?
So, I the big turning point for me of knowing that like something really had to change in my life was a trip with some girlfriends that I took. We were going to camp in the woods, and where I live in New York, it's very mountainous. There's a lot of
Mhm.
hiking and all of that, and there's some pretty significant peaks that people like to accomplish. And so it was me and like four of my other girlfriends, and we were all going on this trip. And one day they wanted to do this hike. It was 5.5 hours and pretty rigorous for people in good shape. And I knew that I couldn't do that. I was like, there is no way that I'm going to be able to accomplish that because
Right.
my just walking, my knees would hurt, my back hurt. I, sweat just sitting around. Like I just knew that it was not going to be something I was going to be able to join them on. So I kind of like had this guise of like, I'll just stay back and read my book. I told all of them, I was like, don't worry, you guys go. It's not
Mm.
going to really be my thing. I'm just going to stay here and by myself and read my book. And I'm just going to have so much fun. Da, da, da. When in all reality, like I would have loved nothing more than to have been a part of it. And
Yeah.
I remember getting home from that trip and sobbing. They didn't end up doing the hike because other circumstances that involved copious amounts of adult beverages the night before
Okay.
and 2 a.m. going to bed. Anyway, so it was kind of my
Neither here
savior.
nor
They
there.
couldn't. But anyway, so I got home and I just was like, I sobbed and I was like, just felt so defeated because I felt like I was like a prisoner in my own body.
Yeah.
There's so many things that I wanted to do, and so many things that I know that I would really love doing if my body was capable of it. Like fitness. I know that that was something I would enjoy if my body could do it better and do it the way I wanted it to. And so that was kind of my waking up point of like, there's so many things that I've sat on the sidelines for
Yeah.
because I wasn't capable because of my weight, and I'm over that. I don't want to be a bystander in my life anymore. And so I had seen commercials for the bariatric program in my area plenty of times on TV. And I had actually reached out to them during COVID once, and they got reached out to me, and it never went any farther than that. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to do it again
Hmm.
because I knew that they had, if nothing else, they had like a dietitian program so that like maybe they could help guide me in weight loss even if it was non-surgical. And so I reached out to them, and then after having some serious conversations kind of with everybody in the teams and whatever, it just kind of went from there. But that was the moment where I was like, this is
You're
not the life
done.
I want to live.
One of the things that you had told me that I was fascinated by is because not everybody follows you on TikTok, but you're such an avid reader and you love reading and you love researching. And one of the things that we did talk about in our little pre chat is that you were one of those people that would not just listen to the radio, but you wanted to know everything about it, like how it worked. And like you were telling me the story about how you would take apart the radio just so you could figure out how to put it back together again. And I'm like, that is such an analytical brain that I would like. I'm fascinated by it. I don't think I would have the patience because the minute one screw is not going where it needs to, the whole thing's going out the fucking window. I'm like, fuck this shit. But like, I'm curious to know, like, because of that mentality that you had, how did you apply that towards like doing research for the surgery?
So I definitely am a more analytical brain, right? I always want to know how things work, why they work. Telling me something isn't good enough. I want to know more about it, right?
Right.
So when I started to research bariatrics, I went less the looking at people who've had the surgery, and I went more to the people that are doing the surgery. So I started
Interesting.
reading like surgical blogs and watching surgical procedure videos. Like I watched people like in there doing the bypasses and stuff because there's videos you can watch of, especially like the ones in Mexico. You watch them do it. You can watch
Really?
them. They film the whole thing. And so I went more the route of like, I want to know exactly what they're doing in there, like what wires are being crossed and why. So when I started doing my research, it was definitely more from a science, like I want to know how and why it's working basis. So a lot of the things that I talk about on my TikTok and a lot of the things I share are more from like the science end of it. Like, why do you need protein? Why is that important to your body? What does your body do with it? How does it like, why is it such a focus post bariatric surgery?
Right.
And also like the different types of procedures. Like I went back and forth, quite a bit on which one I was going to choose. Um, but yeah, I read a ton of like, medical websites that are intended more for the people that are, doing the procedures and less for the people that are getting them. But I wanted to know because I've always been the type of person where I can appreciate something more if I fully understand it.
Which, and I
Um,
have a lot of respect for that. And I kind of wish there's a part of, see, I'm torn because there's a part of me that would have liked to have known the inner workings of it ahead of time. But then if I knew the inner workings of it ahead of time, would I still have gone through it or whatever? I was literally, like, I think like yesterday years old or like a month ago when I had Katie Bug on the show and she was telling me the process. I was under the impression, like when you have surgery, like I've never had a C-section, but I thought it was like C-section related, where like you have your gown on and then you have the curtain goes up, like right to the stomach. You just have like your little stomach exposed. I had no idea that one, you're butt ass naked, and then two, you are moved upright into like an upright position. Like that completely. I feel like if I had known that, I don't know. I don't know if I would do the surgery. That is terrifying. But I think it's good to know those things and to be like purposely plan for it ahead of time. I don't know. I'm
I
torn.
don't know that it would be the way everybody should go, especially for people that just get nervous about those sort of things anyway. But I do feel like it was super, super helpful for me in understanding a lot of what to expect, right? Because
Yeah.
I wasn't surprised by a lot of things that came after my surgery because I kind of already knew they were going to happen. I understood the medical trauma that was going to happen to my body. I understood like all of the different things that were happening inside that I couldn't see from the outside that made
Right.
others easier for me to wrap my head around. Like a lot of people get very discouraged by the immediate post surgery stall. But I already knew that that was coming because I knew all the things that were going to be happening to my body as far as healing and swelling and fluid retention and all of the things. And so I do feel like part of it, yes, probably made it a little bit more scary, but part of it made it so that I really understood the importance and how like this wasn't just going to be something easy, right?
Right.
It made me better understand that this was going to be a permanent life altering change, which for me, the way that my brain works, made me appreciate what I was doing and what I
Right.
was sacrificing for myself even more.
And I do think that for me, I'm not an overly scientific person. I don't mind watching those kind of videos. In hindsight, like I could probably watch a surgery right now. I do wish that there was a healthy balance of it, though. I wish that I would have read some things or watched some videos ahead of time to have known that like things can happen, like the hair loss or what ketosis feels like, or when your blood pressure drops, because your body or your hormones are regulating. Like there's a lot of things that I wish I knew the science ahead of time, because back then we didn't have social media, was not as prominent as it is now. There wasn't like a community that I can talk to. So for me, I was going through a lot of these things blindly and not knowing that this, but had I had resources to have done all this research like you had done, I'd been like, oh yeah, this is the phase, right? Around month 4 or 5, I'm gonna start losing hair, or oh, I'm getting lightheaded. Okay, this is normal because of X, Y, and Z. And I'm not turning to Google all the time and find out that I have some rare disease, which is usually what happens to me, which is why I'm not allowed to Google anything.
Yeah,
Um,
don't let it be any of your symptoms. You will have the bubonic plague if you do.
yeah. So with all of the research that you did ahead of time, do you think it was enough for you to be fully mentally prepared for the aftermath of when you had the surgery?
Um, no.
Oh,
Know that anybody can be until you're in it. You can. It's definitely better, I think, to know certain aspects of it before, for your healing and all of that. But I do think that with most anything in life, right, you have to kind of live it to be prepared for it. You
mhm.
have to be in the moment. I think you can prepare in certain ways, like you can make sure you have the right foods on hand. You can make sure you kind of read about like restrictions and what you need to do to help your healing.
Mhm.
But every journey for everybody is so different. So even if I read, about 100 people's surgeries, that doesn't guarantee that mine is going to be like that. It doesn't
Right.
mean that what happens to my body is going to happen to everybody's body. So yes, you can prepare yourself a little bit, but I think most of the lessons that I have learned is just by living it. Figuring out what works, what doesn't, where I differ from the masses and where I don't. I don't know. It's
Yeah,
always a constant learning.
And that's one of the reasons that I love doing this show too, is because somebody can look at a bariatric podcast or whatever right now and be like, okay, it's the same thing. You all cut your stomach off and then like you lose weight. But no two stories that I've had in the last year and a half have been the same. There might be certain small minuscule elements that are very similar to each other or similar situations, but no story is the same. And like you said, you're not going to know how you're going to come out of this until you're just in it yourself, because it's based on our own personal histories, what our life has been like ahead of time, our genetics and everything like that, which is why it's so important. Like, I get that it's great to have communities and it's great to see like progress of other people, but like you can't base this surgery on just seeing somebody's before and after picture. And I respect you for taking the time and like not being so fixated on that, because as society we're all about the visual element of it and picturing what we're going to look like if we do this. But you took the time to actually learn all of the mechanics of it so that you can get your headspace in the best way possible, which I think did probably help in some element, because at least in certain phases you knew what to expect so you can prepare yourself mentally. It might not mean that it's going to make it easy to navigate through it and you're still going to have, setbacks and struggles and stuff. But I think by knowing that it was a potential that it may or may not happen for you, at least you're able to see the warning signs early.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely think that it helped. And that is such an important thing to remember, is that none of us will be the same,
Mm-hmm.
period. Not one of us will be the same. Where we start is different, where we end will be different, and our in-betweens will be different, because that's just how life works. No one person is an exact cookie cutter of another. And that
Mm-hmm.
is Patrick as well. And I think that that's sometimes where people can have the hardest time, and where I feel like some of the people struggle, is because they're trying to compare and duplicate their
Yeah.
now their journey to somebody else's, and that makes it really hard. Like, have I done really well? Yes. Have I accomplished a lot in the amount of time that I've had? Of course I have, but I also know that there have been people that have done it faster than me. There have been people that are going to do it slower than me. They're going to, we all start in such
Yeah.
wildly different places. And I do like try to remind myself of that, of course, because we're all human, right? I see people sometimes and I'm like, why can't I be that? But then I also have to remember that it's because I'm not that. That's
Mm-hmm.
not me. I'm my own unique snowflake, if you will, and we
Yes.
all
We're
are.
all
And
snowflakes.
we are. And so I think that is like one of the most important things that I tell people when they're like, what's your biggest piece of advice? I'm like, just focus on, like, don't focus only on your journey, because there's a lot you can learn from other people, but just remember that we're all different in
Right.
so many ways.
And now I'm curious now, because you have lost a vast amount of weight, and not only that, your confidence has grown. We're going to get into your fitness and stuff today too. But coming from somebody who was always the fat, funny friend, or it was always this fat, like this label being placed on your personality. Um, how has like people's relationships with you changed since then?
So my like closest friends and stuff, nothing really has changed between us. I'm very fortunate that I have a great support system, and that really hasn't changed. They loved me for who I was before. They still love me for who I am now. What I'm noticing the biggest change is strangers, and how people treat me, just in public in general.
Yeah.
Even though I was the extroverted fat funny friend, in like social people that I knew settings, I was essentially practically invisible everywhere else. Like, I wasn't somebody that people went out of their way to acknowledge unless they had to.
Right.
I wasn't someone that people would run to hold a door for. I wasn't somebody that people like took a second look at ever. And that is one thing that I've noticed has changed a lot. And sometimes it's super flattering, and sometimes it like pisses me off, because I'm like,
Yeah.
I literally haven't I'm exactly the same person as I was before. Why wasn't I worth noticing before? So, day to day, that's a scale that kind of wavers sometimes. I'm like, ooh, hey, are you looking at me? Like, ooh. And then
Right.
other days, stop looking
Like,
at me.
what
I
the fuck?
literally was a year ago just as worthy of all of the things that you're giving me right
Right.
now. And so it's more, yeah, it's more been like strangers and their reaction that has been the thing that I've noticed the most, as opposed to like my personal relationships that are
And I
close to
do
me.
agree with you. I know, like in my own personal life, the people who are closest to me, they supported me 1,000%, but they still loved me regardless of what size I was at. It was people that were either distant acquaintances or, like you said, all of a sudden people are opening doors for you at the restaurant, and you're like, okay, a year ago you would not have opened this door for me. Like, what has changed now? And it would be people that you would, those people in high school that ignored you or wouldn't address you or whatever, and then all of a sudden they're finding you on Facebook, or they're approaching you at your reunion, and you're like, you did not give me the time of day to even have a conversation. Why is it all of a sudden? And so I think that was one of the things that I in the beginning used to struggle with the most, is a question, like I felt like it was questioning my self-value. I was like, why is it that the exterior somehow is the only factor that's going to determine my entire being or whatever, to make you whether or not you want to have a conversation or talk to me or whatever the case may be. And over the years, I've learned we don't give fucks what other people think or whatever, or like how people treat us. But in the beginning, I relate to people who do struggle with that, and how do you, like, what helps you to navigate out of that without getting so angry or like resentful to people being nicer to you?
I mean, part of it is just the realization that that is just society, right? We have been conditioned, all of us, since childhood, that there is this certain mold that you have to fit to be worthy of certain
Mhm.
things. Gaining privilege, I don't care what, well, I shouldn't say I don't care what anybody thinks, because I care a lot about what a lot of people think, but skinny privilege is a thing. And there's a lot of people who will never know that because they've never been in an obese. I
Right.
do feel like there's certain things that you can't empathize with unless you have been overweight, unless you've tried to navigate in a world like ours, in a body that society doesn't deem as, beautiful.
Right.
And so I think part of it is just a realization that that is just the way that the world is. And especially with social media and all these things that we have now that are even more so kind of blanketing you with what perfect is and what it should look like and what you should have
Yeah.
and what you shouldn't have and the molds that you should fit into, it's even harder. So I think part of it is just like knowing that and reminding myself that a lot of what we base things off of isn't even reality.
Right.
And then just like, also just reminding myself that I'm not any more or less worthy of the things that I have now that I'm 100 pounds less than I was before. And that was really hard for me. Now I struggle the most with how awful I was to myself for 30 years when I didn't have to be.
Right.
I feel like I love my bigger body so much more now that I'm not in it than I did then, because I was too in my own self-loathing and stuff to see that I was great then too.
Right.
Um, so I think now, like, I just try to remind myself of that, there was nothing wrong with me then. I know I thought there was, and I know I picked myself apart and made myself feel horrible pretty much every moment of every day, but it, I didn't deserve that
No.
because I still had all these beautiful attributes, regardless of how I looked.
Which is so true. And I wish that we could go back in time and like apologize to our former selves for the reason our self-esteem is being lowered is not because of what other people have said or done to
I'm
us.
gonna let my dog in here because
You're fine.
he's driving me nuts.
I
And
wasn't going to say anything.
it's not even my dog, but he is incessantly.
I can tell you, you handled that very, very well. Like you were still like, you knew where you were going. Um, what I was gonna say is I wish that we can go back, because our self-esteem and like how we felt about ourselves, I don't think was truly about what other people had said or done to us. It was how we let it affect us, and how it was that we were giving them validation for feelings about us that we already had. And when you expel that kind of an energy of insecurity or whatever, you attract people like that into your life that will help. If you're feeling a certain way about yourself, you're attracting people that are going to say and do things to keep you in that place. And I wish that we can get to a point where you can just go back and at least forgive yourself for how you talked to yourself when no one else was around, how you treated yourself, and how you let the words and actions of others take complete control over your life and how you viewed yourself.
I always, I talk a lot with other people, and for those that have been in my lives, you hear me say a lot that we would never talk to somebody that we loved and cared about the way we talk to ourselves.
Yeah.
I would never say the things to you, to my loved ones, to my family that I say to myself in my own head. And I
Mm-hmm.
don't know why there's this disconnect that we think it's okay when we're talking to ourselves, but not with others. Why should the words that we say that are hurtful matter more when they're not to ourselves? I
Right.
think if anybody should talk kindly, it should be us to us, because we have to live with ourselves every single day. And I wrote a really uh, important letter to myself a few months ago to kind of get that out there. And it was an apology to myself from myself, because farther out that I get now, the more that I wish I could just go back in time and like hug her and
I
tell her that
love
I'm
that.
sorry for tearing her apart for so long, because she didn't deserve it. And it's something that like I said, the further out I get, the more like bittersweet it is. I'm
Yeah.
so happy for the person I'm becoming, and I'm so grateful for the chance that I'm getting to kind of live my life in a way that I wanted to for so long. But it also makes me kind of even more and more um, aware of the fact that like I didn't do a lot of the things that I should have for myself, that um, or the things that I should have been saying to myself for so long shouldn't
Oh
have
my God.
changed because of my weight loss.
How powerful of a release would that be for somebody? An exercise to do, to sit and write out like an apology letter to yourself.
It it was an incredible moment. It was very bittersweet. Some of the pages are blurred from tears, but
Of
I
course.
felt like I really needed to get it out there. And for me, writing is cathartic. I wrote it in a beautiful journal that Mandy bought for me on a very hard day many months ago, when I was struggling with my things like that, my self-esteem and stuff. And so I
Mm-hmm.
wrote it in there. And I think I'm gonna keep that as a habit. Anytime where I like, I'm struggling with those thoughts of insecurity and wishing that I had done things differently in the past, I think I'm just gonna write to myself and remind myself like of all the beautiful things that I have still and had been. But yeah, I recommend it because it was very emotionally releaseful.
Yeah.
A lot of the things that I was starting to carry around, a lot of that like pent up kind of resentment for um, things that I felt like I didn't deserve.
I don't know why I feel like that resonates so much right now with my life and where I'm going. And I don't know, I might have to include that in the book that I'm writing because I think that would be extremely. I thought you were staring at me for a second, but I realized you were
Oh,
reading the
sorry, I'm
comment.
reading the comments.
I
I mean,
was like, oh,
I'm
are
just
we
kidding.
intently looking each other's eyes?
Yeah. No, I recommend it. Just try it. I mean, one of the exercises that I do a lot, that is also in that journal, is when I am having those moments where I am picking myself apart. And because, it is difficult, especially with rapid weight loss and watching your body change in many ways. There are days where I just continue to see only the negative, right? And so
Yeah.
one of the practices that I have for myself is, as soon as I recognize those moments, I stop and I pull out my notebook and I write down 10 good things about myself. Or whether that's physical, mental, whatever. Non-scale victories. Sometimes it's just 10 great things that I have accomplished since my, bariatric surgery, or it changes day to day, whatever it's related to. But every time I'm having one of those days where I'm just standing in front of the mirror and I'm just like flapping things around and picking things apart and tearing myself down, I stop and I go and I take my notebook out and I start to write nice things about myself and my life and whatever I need to, because I'm really, really trying hard to reroute that behavior.
I think that's smart because I know for me, I've always been wildly insecure my entire life because I was obese almost my entire life. But when you're over 350 pounds, like you're fat everywhere. Like everywhere is like there's not like an isolated part of you. And it's amazing how you can have such amazing success and lose like 170 some odd pounds and almost feel like it's still not good enough because now there's isolated areas that are off, whereas before everything like was all, together. And it's so easy to look at yourself in the mirror and like fixate on a part of your stomach or fixate on a part of your arms instead of being like, the reason I have loose skin is because I lost 170 fucking pounds and I'm like doing things that I never dreamed possible and I'm living my best life. And I think that we all need a reminder to sometimes just sit down and write all of the good things that are surrounding you right now and then the more that you do that, I feel like you would be less fixated on a little extra skin here and there because you have like this visual in front of you of all these amazing things.
Yeah, and I think just like for me, just reminding myself just in general, like, hey, remember that time that the doctor told you that like if you didn't start changing, you would probably die? Yeah,
Mhm.
maybe let's be nicer to the fact that you have jiggly arm skin and remember that you get to live probably 20 years longer. Like,
Yeah.
stop it.
And
Stop thinking
somebody,
like that.
I don't remember who I was talking to. It might have even been on this show. If you guys watch the other shows, let me know. But I remember somebody telling me, like, I think it was like oh, maybe it was Dean. It was Dean. On Dean's episode, he was talking about that he was given this realization. I think his wife had said something to him like, how many obese people do you know that are in their 70s or make it to their 80s? And that is such a stark realization that we should not be caring about a little flap here and there because at this point I have a much better chance of making it to 80 or 90, or I have already determined I'm going to live forever. Like I don't know what needs to happen or whatever, but I'm going to be 200-300 years old before I go. But I would have never made it that far. I probably wouldn't make it past I probably wouldn't have been to 50. I don't think.
No, no, one of the so when I went for my so when I reached out to my program and I expressed interest in it, the first thing that they said was like you need to go to your doctor, get a full blood panel done, get a full workup, get some things documented that would suggest that you would be a candidate, because right now you haven't been to the doctor in like a lot longer than you probably should have. And we
Right.
just need to make sure that you're doing whatever you need to do. So I went to the doctor and was made wildly aware of just how unhealthy I had become. I had high blood pressure. I had high cholesterol. I was diabetic, which I had no idea, which made a lot of things make a lot of sense. I had chronic joint pain, back pain, neck pain. I was super unhealthy. And he looked at me and he was like, I know that I'm not going to tell you anything you probably don't know at this
Right.
point. He's like, but you're only 33 years old. He's like, and you have things happening that are going to require medical, like, medicine intervention to for you to continue to live like to live, because at that point I like didn't know I was diabetic, right? I didn't
Right.
know I had high blood pressure to the point where like I should have probably been on medicine for it. And he's like, I know you're here for a consultation because you need it for your bariatric like journey that you want to go on. And he's like, I not that I always think that that's the best solution. He's like, but at your age, you do need to do something because this won't be a terribly
Yeah.
great experience if you don't. And that was pretty eye opening because I was like, I got home and I was like, okay, well, I want to live,
Right.
you know?
So were you 33 when you had it or 34?
Yeah. Yeah. I just turned 34 in March.
Oh, so we were the same age. I was 33 when I had surgery.
Hmm.
And it's,
Well,
I feel like that was so long ago.
it does go by a lot faster than you think.
Yeah.
That's one thing that I will say that I noticed was like this. It felt like a very fast 8 months, and I know that not everybody will probably say that, but for me, the time went by quickly. I feel like the 2 months like on either end go kind of slowly.
Yeah.
And then I feel like it's been fast.
Yeah, I can tell you that the first year flew by. Now, obviously, sometimes in the moment, it feels, especially in the very early days, you're like, "Oh my god, this is never gonna fucking end." But before you knew it, a month has gone by, and before you know it, six months have gone by, and you're like, "Where's the time gone?" And in a few weeks, it's gonna be 9 years, and there are still times where I look back and I'm like, "This feels like just a year ago that I was having 1 ounce sips, and I was, you know, doing my little 20-minute walks with my timer like around the apartment." And then there are other times where it feels like it was 30 years ago. And you look at certain pictures and you're like, like that feels like an entire lifetime ago, but it was only 9 years ago. Like the time deception or distortion is so crazy, at least for me. And I think the further out you get, um, yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, so Crystal's in the comments. Her surgery is tomorrow morning.
I see that. I'm so excited. She said we're the same age too. I love that. I feel
Yes.
like you, unlike TikTok, right? I didn't know if I was like supposed to like address the people leaving comments. Just know that I
Oh
am
my gosh,
reading them.
you.
I see you. I appreciate them. And for the people that are here that like were like, oh my God, I love you. I love you too. So thanks for being here.
Yes, number one. Okay, there's no rule book on this show. Like it's just you and me. You can address every single comment that you want. I want people like if you're in the comments, I want you guys to ask Anastacia questions. Like don't make me have to fucking do all the work. Like I have questions here, but sometimes like you can hear like I know questions that I want to ask you based on what I know about you, but people might be watching this right now and wondering, well, I have questions for her that you can get like an immediate answer. That's one of the reasons why we do it live is so that people can engage and ask questions. So you can obviously address the comments if you want. And now I know that you're not giving me the googly eyes, you're giving them the googly eyes.
Yes.
That's fine.
Well, I'm on my phone, so they're kind of small. So every time I do this, it's because um, I can't see.
Which is okay. So I can read some of the comments for you. Crystal had said, "It took so many years, but finding people like you all taught me that I'm enough. I've always been enough. I forgave what I said to myself at my lowest point,"
Ugh.
which I
And what
love.
an incredible feeling that is. Because I know that feeling. I know that feeling of being like, "Hey, I'm sorry. I wish I had been better to you, and now I can move on." Almost, like
Yeah.
just trying to realize that like you were enough then, you're enough now. My word of my journey is like if Tanya chooses her choose word, well, mine is worthy. And that because I was worthy then, I'm worthy
Yeah.
now. I wish I had recognized that, but it's too late. And so now I just need to be like, hey, I loved you then. I just didn't know how to tell you in all of the right ways. So
Yeah. And what's funny is like I feel like that is just so powerful, and I think that that's probably one of the few things that I have not done yet on this journey in all these years. Like I've written the book about it, like I've told my story, and I've like addressed on a surface level things that I've gone through and relationships that I've had and the way people have treated me, but I don't think I've ever sat and really wrote out like a message to myself and like in just owning up to the mistakes that I made and how I treated myself or how I viewed myself, because even to this day I still struggle with wild insecurity. And I'm one of those people that I believe you fake it till you make it, and you put on a smile and you get out and you squat and like you do all these things, but inside you're terrified that people are still judging you or that you're never good enough. And I've gotten to the point where I'm so uncomfortable if somebody gives me a compliment because I don't know how to take it. And then I automatically will throw out a joke or like deflect it in some way and still kind of do like this verbal self-sabotage. Like I secretly want attention from you, but now you're giving me attention and it's making me very uncomfortable. So stop giving me attention. So I'm just going to self-deprecate and then move. And like I still struggle with how to get on the other side of that.
oh, I feel that. I feel that so deeply. I too, like I think one of the hardest things for me has been that I everybody, I shouldn't say everybody because that makes me sound very vain,
A lot
but
of people.
many people make comments now about my appearance.
Mhm.
And I was never somebody that would have been labeled as the pretty friend, right? I never was. Like, I was the last one to be acknowledged in my group of friends. I have wildly beautiful friends inside and out, but like my best friends are like supermodel, bombshell, beautiful girls. And I was, if we were like out in a group, I was always the last one to get acknowledged. I was
Oh
like the
yeah.
one that people talked to because like they had to so that they could wingman for their buddy who was talking to like my hot friend, right? I didn't have a boyfriend at all in high school. I had
Nope.
one kind of in college and then
No.
was married, but I was never like, I was never recognized as being beautiful.
Right.
It just wasn't my thing. I had, I was, like I said, funny and all those things, but I was never beautiful. And now it's been really weird to navigate that because I don't know how to receive it. I
Right.
immediately like, "Ugh, not me,
Ugh.
"Ugh, that's not me. You're looking at somebody else." And
Yeah.
it's been really weird. It's been really weird to not immediately deflect when people say things
Yeah.
like that to me.
Or
To be
you
like,
want to look behind you like,
who?
wait,
Huh?
there's nobody else. Are you talking to me?
Me?
No,
Yeah, it's
no.
been really strange.
I don't.
And kind of the same as you, like, yeah, fake it till you make it. Like, I never wanted to be the friend that was like the Debbie Downer. Like part of that like persona of the happy
Mhm.
fat fun friend was that you couldn't ever not be that out
No.
of fear of being like, oh well, I need to maintain this because I can't be fat and also
Depressed
unhappy.
or yes.
Right. I can't be fat and also not fun. Like that's not gonna work. So yeah, I would like make it like a lot of people in my personal life. One of the comments I get from them a lot is like, we didn't realize that you were like unhappy. And I'm like,
Mhm.
because I didn't let you know. I on the outside was this
Mhm.
bubbly, fun, but inside I was struggling
Yes.
terribly. I was so depressed. But nobody would ever know because, like you, I would get up, I'd put my size 20 pants on, and I'd go to
Mhm.
work and I'd pretend like everything was great and my life was wonderful. And then I'd come home and shut the door and fall apart
Mhm.
every single day. And um, that was a exhausting life.
I
Not only outside of just having to operate in a body that was obese and tired physically,
yeah.
but I was so tired mentally because not only that, but all of the things that we as obese people
Mm.
think about all day long that are like wild assumptions and stuff is also exhausting. Like,
Yeah.
how often were we over analyzing situations, over ridiculing ourselves and our interactions with everybody, like even obsessive food thoughts. I was
Mhm.
a compulsive eater, a compulsive, obsessive food person in general. I thought about food from the moment my eyeballs opened in the morning until the moment I closed them at night. And I didn't realize how much of my mental space and how much of my like mental capacity I spent just on thinking about food alone. And that
Yeah.
wasn't even thinking about people and judging and all of these other things. Like I was exhausted in ways that I couldn't put into words now. I didn't realize really how bad it was until I was
Yeah.
where I am now. But looking back, I'm like, I was a
It's
mess in
it's
so many
cr-
ways.
and Jeff says ditto. I was the funny fat guy, not the one that got all the girls. Us Barry boys deflect the compliments too. It's so
Yeah.
true, and it is so exhausting the energy that you put into putting up a front so that when you're overweight and you feel like you have to be the fat funny friend just to be included to go places. And like you said, you can't be the overweight fat funny friend and then have a bad day and be sad, because then you're just like a mood killer, whatever. And then like, so you have to put on this smile, you have to put on this front, and you go out to the mall with your friends and they're at Charlotte Russe and they're trying on the size 6 and the size 4, and you're just kind of like, what? And then they're like, come on, try something. And then you go into the dressing room, and I cried in every single dress. I didn't want to do it, because nothing was going to fit me. And then like, but then you have to like pull yourself together before you get out of the dressing room, because if they see you upset, oh God, Sherry's being a Debbie Downer, like blah, blah, blah. And so you constantly, and I think that was why I was always such a people pleaser, is because the more that I can cheer up other people or make other people laugh, the less likely they were to fixate on all of my flaws the way that I was fixating on them. And if I could just beat them to the punch and let them know, hey, it's okay that I'm making a joke about myself, because then you don't have to later. You know, and it was like assuming that people were going to think this of you. And it sucks that we are so insecure and so damaging to ourselves that we assume that all of our friends are shallow assholes, and they're not. You know, it's all in our mind and the way that we're projecting ourselves and having to put up a front just, you know, because you think that's what's expected you, when it wasn't. If you would just have been like your true authentic self, like they likely would have still been your friends, because obviously they were hanging out for you because of who you were, not because of how you looked.
And
And
one
I
of my best friends ever um, was like, we hadn't seen each other in quite a while. And after I had my surgery, she was going through some things and moving, and it just like was one of those moments where things just didn't align like that. And so I saw her probably in like March. And at that point, I had lost enough weight where it was starting to be fairly noticeable or whatever. And so we saw each other, and she didn't say anything about it the whole time we were together. I was like, well, that's kind of weird. And so then I got home and I was like, oh, did she not notice? Did she not care? Like, da 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 da. And then the next time I saw her, she's like, said something, and she's like, well, I said, oh yeah, I've lost so much weight. And she's like, yeah, I know. And I was like, oh, I don't know why. I just thought you would. She's like, well, you're that's not all you are to me. Like, you're more. You were.
yeah.
I loved you just as much before, and I love you now. And I don't like. I'm happy for you, and I'm happy for whatever you're doing. But I don't like. It hasn't impacted my thoughts of you at all. So I didn't think it was worth noting. And I was like, no, like my insecurities immediately were like, why is she saying anything? Like she
Right.
meant like all these things, but really it was just because to her, I'm still the same person. She's like, I'm so happy for you. She's like, for one, it's not my place to comment on your body. And for two, it doesn't make you any more or less important to me. Like, I didn't feel like I
See,
needed to bring it up.
we need more people like that
I
in
was
this
like,
world, for sure.
you're right. Yes.
Um, so question for you. Do you remember one of the things I told you right before we started the show?
No, I was probably too nervous to fully
You said you're really
observe it.
nervous, and I told you, one, within a couple of minutes, it's going to be so natural and you're going to be so fine at this, and number two, it's going to go by so quickly you're not even going to realize. And we are literally about out of time already, because I told you it was going to happen so quickly. So already one, I'm going to have you come back on again, because we didn't get any to the fitness side or any of the other things that we wanted to talk about. But I do want to give you the floor for a few minutes, because everyone's answers differently. So I'm always fascinated by what's important to you. But if somebody like a Crystal, or somebody who's watching this right now, who is about to embark on their journey or is in the beginning stages, and they're watching you, based on the last 11 months for you or so, what would be the biggest piece of advice that you would give to somebody who's just starting out?
Oof. This is a big one, isn't it?
I know, no pressure.
Well, it's so I know we talked about this right before I got on too, but you remember that you are you. You are your own person in so many beautiful, wonderful ways already before you get the surgery. And that's not going to change after. After the surgery, you are going to be your own very unique person. And I think one of the most detrimental things that happens to a lot of us when we are navigating this journey is we compare ourselves to other people. And there are so many things that bring us together in this journey, but there are so many things that make us wildly different.
Mm-hmm.
We all are different heights, different starting weights, different comorbidities, different ages, different activity levels on a daily basis. We have different passions and different loves. We're gonna seek fitness in different ways. We're gonna seek our diets in different ways. All of those are going to make it so that the way that your journey works for you is going to be beautifully your own. And we will never start in the same place. We will never end in the same place. And that is something that we can put to our whole lives, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's our career, whether it's our relationships, whether it's our bodies. We always want to compare ourselves to what we see other people doing, not doing, experiencing, not experiencing. But we have to remember that we are us. We are our own unique person in our own unique body, and all of that will be different. So to you, I say, go with grace, be kind to yourself, be patient,
Hmm.
but also remember that just because I'm telling you a way to do something, it doesn't mean it's the way to do something. It doesn't mean that your experience will be like mine. It doesn't mean that because you eat what I eat, you will do exactly what I do. That's not the way it works. So
Right.
just remember that it's good to seek education and it's good to seek advice, but that doesn't mean that that's going to be exactly the way that you should do things or the way that it will work for you.
Very, very well said. Thank you, Chloe. We have a new listener. Because we
Oh.
are out of time, but I do want to give Chloe the floor if she wants to ask a question. I do not want her to be left stranded. So, Chloe, if you're still here, go ahead and ask your question before we wrap it up. Jeff says, "Yep, the comparison game is hard. Just do you. I started at 490, so my weight loss has been 200 plus pounds, but now I'm at the weight some other people start their journey at." Yeah, that was one thing that was crazy for me too. Is talking to people who might have been like at 230 or 240 or whatever it was, and that was their starting weight, and I was like, that was like 130 pounds or like 100 pounds before yours. And again, it just means that our journeys are different. So hence why I don't like to tell people how much I lost the first week of surgery, because I feel like it gives people like an unrealistic expectation of what they're supposed to do. But I was like, again, there's factors. I didn't have a pre-op diet. So my day of surgery was like day one for me. And two, I had a lot more to lose than other people. So I'm going to lose more in the first week than other people.
I
Yes,
was one of the people that started at a fairly low number, right? But then I also like to remind people that I'm 5 feet tall.
yeah,
I am not tall. So 250 on a 5 foot tall body is going to be widely different than
yes.
250 on somebody who's 5'11". So that's why a lot of times you'll see I say how much I've lost, but I don't usually give my stats
Mhm.
on what I weigh or what I started, because you can't. There's a lot of things that you miss when you just
Yeah,
give these blanket numbers of things.
100%. So Chloe says she's 36 weeks pregnant. First and foremost, congratulations, lady. And will
Yes,
deliver in a few weeks, and the recovery is about 6 weeks. How do you recommend I work out, and how hard is recovery like when you recover from surgery? Is it hard recovering mentally? Well, on that note, I cannot answer. I have never popped a baby or been pregnant before, but I know that on average it's usually about 6 weeks, and I think that they'll tell you to start with like light walking, maybe some light weights, and then I would definitely ask your doctor what the once you're cleared to do workouts. I would definitely start small and work your way up. You don't want to go big or go hard like right off the bat or whatever. I'm pretty sure that early on you can start walking, and that's amazing exercise. It's good for your heart. It's good to get the vitamin D. Um, and then usually you can start with light weights after that, depending on what you like to do. I don't know. What about you?
Yeah, I also have no experience. I don't have any children, so I can't tell you what recovery will be like for that. But if you're, it does sound like you're kind of asking for post surgical bariatric surgery recovery too. And same thing. For me, it was 6 weeks. I had to wait 6 weeks. I could start walking after. Well, they wanted me up and walking pretty much immediately,
Yeah.
intermittently, as much as I could tolerate, and then for at least a half an hour a day after 2 weeks. And so I did do that. I was cleared to start going back to the gym and stuff. At 6 weeks, I just had to start, I had to start small, build up
Yeah.
from there. So same
Oh,
thing.
and she was saying it didn't have to necessarily be baby related. Just how hard was it going back to working out? So I know for me, I'm a huge advocate right now in starting earlier, because when I had my surgery, I did the walking and I walked religiously every single day, but I never got into the gym. I never did weight training. I never, worked on strengthening muscles until years later. I was in year 7 before I actually actively was going to the gym and like toning and trying to do what I can. And I do think that that caused me a lot of damage long term, because um, even though you've lost all this weight and you think you're unstoppable and you can do all this shit that you've never done before, you find yourself upside down on a stripper pole, taking a pole dancing class and realizing I've never strengthened my back before. I've never done ample workouts. And then you throw your back out, and it's been almost a year to the day since that has happened, and we're still not 100%. So I encourage people to start early on. I think yoga is an amazing thing to do. It's a great way to tone your body and stretch your muscles and work them out. Um, oh, you play tennis. I don't know if you're going to want to play tennis like 2 or 3 weeks out post off, but once your doctor clears you, like obviously your doctor is going to know more than he's going to know your body and what your abilities are. But I am very jealous of tennis. I've always wanted to play tennis. I just spend the whole time chasing the ball around and not hitting it.
And I know that, like Sherry said, we're going to come back and probably talk fitness another time, which is a huge passion of mine now. But same, I am also a huge advocate in getting your body moving, and to start
Yes.
strength training within reason and within your capabilities as soon as you can. In my surgical office, am a kind of an anomaly. So
Yeah.
my in-body scans, I am one of the few that has not lost any muscle mass. I've actually gained muscle mass, which doesn't come easy. I will tell you that. But I think one of the
Mm-hmm.
reasons that I um, was able to kind of rebound in certain things a little faster was because I did start to incorporate certain things into my routines, and strength training was one of them. Um, because a lot of times your body is going, well, post bariatric surgery, right? We're in like pretty significant malnutrition for the
Yeah.
beginning stages as it is. We're in an extreme calorie deficit. We are trying to navigate a body that now absorbs nutrients very differently than it did before. And so there's already a lot of things that are kind of working against us as far as that goes. And when your body doesn't have enough nutrients and enough protein, it's going to pull that from your muscle. And so a
Yeah.
lot of people, if they're not meeting their protein goals, if they're not eating what they should be eating, if they're not taking their vitamins, their body will start to eat its muscle to compensate. And that
Mm-hmm.
is not great, obviously, as one would think. And the best way to negate some of that is to make sure you're hitting your macros, make sure you're taking your vitamins, but also strength training. Because if you're reintroducing muscle into muscle tears and repairing and rebuilding muscle, it helps to combat the loss of it as well. So it is important, if you can, to start to incorporate it in whatever ways that is. That it could be, like I always tell people, you could be starting with 2 cans of soup and
Mm-hmm.
3 upper body moves a day, like every 3 days. It doesn't
Mm-hmm.
matter what you do as long as you start somewhere. Trust me,
Yes.
I didn't start then doing what I'm doing now. Like, it's
Right.
been eight
No,
months
you definitely
of
you lead up
still,
to it for sure.
but it is
And
helpful.
And I'm definitely having you come back again, whether you wanted to or not. It's just happening because of your approach to radios and how you did your extensive research on, the bariatric surgery before you had it. I think it's pretty safe to assume that you did extensive reading on macros and diet and how protein works and how absorption works and how fitness, works on certain muscles and stuff. So I am not that
Typical.
extensive with my research. So I think for selfish reasons, I might even have you come back in a couple weeks if you're up for it and
Absolutely.
just focus more on not the bariatric side of it. Oh my God, you see that arm? Okay. Not on the bariatric side of it, but on like, what do you do after bariatrics? It's not even bariatric related, just talking about the nutrition aspect and how we, take everything in. And Chloe, if you're ever interested, if and anybody who's watching right now or listening on Spotify, if you guys are on TikTok, You can follow my business page at Master of Badassery on TikTok. And one of the things that we've been doing for months now is we do MOBA challenges, Master of Badassery challenges every single day, Monday through Friday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I actually have somebody hosting the live right now because I am with the beautiful Anastacia and I did not want to cut that short. But we do challenges every single day. And every month we mix it up. So regardless of the level that you're at, whether you're a very beginner, Chloe, if you're just starting off or whatever, and you're still in recovery, there's light workouts you can do. There's variations of what we're doing every single month. We're finishing the challenge right now, and we're starting arms up on the 1st in a couple of days. Well, by the time you guys are listening, it's probably already going to be commenced. So you can follow us on TikTok every day at 9 p.m. at Master of Badassery. We go live, we do workouts, we get the community together. You don't have to be bariatric to be a part of it. It is for everybody in all different fitness levels. We still need Anastacia to come up and do the challenges with us, but she's kind of kicking ass on her own. But
it's
again,
time, man. 9 p.m. your time is like
I know
midnight.
I know
it's 9 o'clock here.
No, it's 9 p.m. for you.
Yeah, but that's like my bedtime.
Well, you're up right now is what I'm saying. Is like you can do some wall sits with us and some squats.
I'm
not saying you have to do it every single day.
I did do the MOBA push-up challenge all the way through. I did all 1,777,000 or however many it was. I did all of them. I just didn't do it with you, but I did do it. I do all the challenges, just I incorporate them usually somehow into what I'm always doing. I did I think 100 push-ups a day for the first however many days because I didn't quite do the math correctly.
Because you're a fucking beast. Which I fucking love that. So we are out of time. We are definitely going to have Anastacia come back. You have been such an absolute delight, and you are absolutely gorgeous inside and out. Even looking at your before picture, you were gorgeous then, and you are gorgeous now.
Oh.
And so I am very grateful that you took the time to come and talk with us today.
Yes. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, everybody that was here in the comments and everybody that has been here. Go follow Sherry. If you ever have any questions too, much like I'm sure Sherry is the same, always feel free to reach out. I don't always have the answers, but I'm always happy to share or even just be a sounding board for frustrations because I know that there's a lot of them in this bariatric community.
Yeah. And so if Chloe or if anybody watching wants to follow you on TikTok, what is your TikTok handle?
It is at anastacia.berry.andbook. So Anastacia Berry and Books with a period in between each word.
I absolutely love that. So make sure you follow her. You can ask her questions. She's an open book, just like I am. On that note, thank you guys so much for watching. We did take a month off, but we are coming back with a vengeance. And this was a hell of a way to kickstart our coming back from hiatus. And I hope you guys have an amazing week, and we will see you